Looking at me, but I absolutely love to snowboard. I know, I don't believe it either, but it's true. It took me a while to grow accustomed to it, but there's something, and once I finally got the knack of it, there's something about riding down the mountain and just gliding on top of untracked snow that is just, it's unparalleled. I feel like I'm floating, and for a person of my size, floating isn't an option in a lot of ways, so I'll take it where I can get it. There's really nothing like it. But because I love the untracked snow so much, I often find myself veering off of the groomed paths. I try to get into, off of them and down into the trees or someplace where there aren't quite as many people and there haven't been machines that are packing the snow down. The first time I did this, I was snowboarding with my brother John, who is a much better snowboarder than I was. And so we were going through the trees and I kind of got startled and scared. I saw a tree and I actually fell over backwards. And if you've ever been in the mountain up in the trees, you know that as the snow falls, there's usually a big well that happens around the trees. It kind of, the snow can't get in there. And I fell over and I couldn't stop myself. I fell over backwards, right onto my back, head down into this tree well. I was terrified. I thought I was gonna suffocate. I was it was quite an ab workout actually, trying to keep my head up far enough that I didn't drown in the snow. I unbuckled my feet and I worked my way out. I was sweating when I was done. I was exhausted. When I finally got down to the bottom of the hill, my brother John looked at me and said, "What took so long?" And I explained to him what happened. He said, "Oh, you know your problem?" I said, "Yeah, I fell into a tree well." He said, No. You know what your problem is? You're looking at the trees." And I laughed because I thought to myself, listen, John, if I don't look at the trees, I'm going to impale myself on one. I have to look at the trees. He said, No, you're not hearing me. I said, "John, if I don't look I'm in the forest. I can't not look at the trees." And then my brother John looked at me and he said, "No, what you want to do is you want to look not at the trees, look at the path between the trees." I thought, okay. He said, "Look, whether you're looking at the path or you're looking at the trees, you're going to hit what you're looking at. So make sure that you look at the path between the trees." And so next time I went up, I tried to do that, and I looked at the path between the trees. And I'm not going to say I was completely successful. Those trees can be pretty daunting when you're moving fast down a mountain. But I did a little bit better that time. And the next time I was a little bit better at looking at the path between the trees. And the next time a little better, and the next time a little bit better. And before long, I was able to navigate my way through the trees without coming down the hill and looking like a Christmas tree myself because of all the pine needles that were stuck in my clothing. It's a good lesson for snowboarding, but it's more than just a lesson for snowboarding. Keeping your eyes locked on where you want to go is the only safe way to navigate life. There are always obstacles between where we are and where we want to get. There are always trees that present challenges. Trying to navigate the trees of consumerism and nationalism, trying to avoid the tree wells of greed and self-interest and fear was daunting the best of times. But if we spend all of our time looking at the trees, what will happen is we'll find ourselves upside down in one of those tree wells. That's why this morning's proverb insists that we need to keep our eyes on the path, that we need to keep our feet from turning to the right or to the left. Of course, the path down a mountain is a little more circuitous than a straight road, but the principle is the same. What is true on the mountain is true for people, is also true for churches. I mean, how many churches have chosen to focus on the obstacles? How many churches have found themselves upside down in a tree well because they decided to focus on decreased attendance? instead of loving like Jesus did? How many churches have found themselves fighting about masks and vaccines rather than serving their community or one another? How many churches have found themselves decrying changing mores and in the process lost sight of the command to make disciples? The path through the trees gets lost because eyes focus elsewhere. About 6 months ago, the session began to ask some questions about where we were going and who we wanted to reach. And one of the questions we asked was, why so many of our children, those who have been baptized and confirmed and raised in the church, whose lives had been nourished by the church, no longer find the church to be an entity that offers them life? Probably many of us, maybe almost all of us, lament a child or a grandchild who has given up on institutional expressions of faith, if not given up on faith altogether. And so the session began to ask some questions as to why. They asked those questions of their own children and their own grandchildren. The session could see the writing on the wall. When you look around, we are not a young church. And unless there was some way to engage the next generation of disciples, 30 years from now, all that will be left is some endowments and a building. And what we discovered as we asked these questions of our children was that the church, the universal church, not just our local expression of it, but the church itself feels as though it has become too concerned with itself. One person said it like this: I'm tired of the church answering questions that nobody but they are asking. They feel like the Christian church in America has lost sight of the Jesus that it proclaims. Like it has become stuck in a tree well, or a bunch of them all at once. The next generation, the ones who were raised in the church, are intrigued by the Jesus of the Bible. They're intrigued by this person who loved people with reckless abandon. Intrigued by this man who was willing to give up his life to speak the truth to those in power. Intrigued by anyone who embraced the unlovable, who welcomed the outcast. Intrigued by Jesus, who always put people before ideology. And Jesus saw the path. I'm here to tell you this morning that I don't believe your children and your grandchildren have given up on Jesus, most of them. They just don't feel like the institutional church is the place to find him. They feel like the institutional church has become so focused on the trees that it has lost touch with the path that Jesus wandered. I don't know if they're right. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter if they're right. It's their perception. And their perception is their reality. The session has spent this last 6 months discerning together how we can best navigate our way down the mountain. They spent time discerning the path that God is setting before us, the way of Jesus. In just a few moments, I'm going to ask some of the members of our session to come and share with you the path that we have discerned together. Jesus changed the world through the things that they want to share with you this morning. He did it by courageously loving everybody he met. He did it by his willingness to empty himself on behalf of those in need. He did it by being more concerned with people than he was with ideologies. If First Presbyterian Church is going to continue to exist into the future, we are going to have to discover together the path through the trees. And we're going to have to keep our eyes focused on that path. What the session presents to you this morning is the path that we have discerned together. So I'd like to invite Kim and Linda and Craig up. In your bulletin, there's a flyer, an insert, that spells some of these things out specifically with some of the language that we have adopted. We want to share that with you this morning. Over the last 6 months, as we've wrestled together, we've arrived at one driving mission. The mission that we believe must shape us and shape the work that we do. Transformation. We want to be transformed and participate in the transformation of the world through the love of Jesus. That's it. That's the mission. It's the mission that we believe must shape every expenditure, every decision, every ministry. If it isn't moving us towards transformation, it's a tree. The goal isn't more people in worship. The goal isn't a bigger budget or more endowments. The goal isn't more programs. The goal is transformation. Are we being transformed? Is the world around us being transformed? That's the mission. That's what shapes our day-to-day activity. That mission is going to be shaped by our values. You can see them listed there. There are 4 of them. The bulk of our time has been spent identifying these values, identifying the things that should be our touchstones, our measuring sticks, our compass points in terms of decision making, and as a measure of how we grow in our relationship with Jesus Christ. So what we value will determine how we live out our mission. You can see in that insert that you have there, the first value is Christ-Centeredness. It is out of that all our other values must grow. Everything we do should be shaped by the example given to us by Jesus. We want to love and serve and embrace like Jesus did. If that isn't the first value, we can't call ourselves Christian. But if we take the word and work of Jesus seriously, being Christian will not only change us, it will change everyone we meet. Living like Jesus, loving like Jesus, serving like Jesus, sacrificing like Jesus, taking that seriously is no small task. But it is out of that the rest of what we share with you this morning must grow.
Good morning. Just be really close. Okay, good morning. So sorry. Thank you. I'm very nervous, so I apologize if my voice is a little shaky. I also want to say that what I'm about to share, it's like what they say on an infomercial, that what you're going to hear may not reflect all the views of session, because what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit of my own personal wrestling match I'm having with our first value, which is self-emptying mission. In naming our values, we've also named the desired conditions to help us in our journey of transformation. These words are intended as a call to action. To be honest, and just speaking for myself, I'm not exactly sure what that looks like moving forward. The words self-emptying to me evokes a really strong emotion, a feeling that means something bigger for me, something deeper. These words make me feel unsettled. I've been reading and praying and trying to gain better understanding of what this means for me. And I've been asking myself a number of questions for the past weeks when it comes to serving others. Have I been too complacent? Have I loved the unlovable? Have I pushed myself to mission work that is difficult or challenging? Have I personally emptied myself into mission work? And I can honestly say, I don't think I have. Although I feel personally challenged and even uncomfortable by this statement, I realize it's not intended to be something that can be easily defined with a ready-made definition or a clever catchphrase, and that discomfort is okay. I wonder if maybe the power of this value is that being unsettled leads to change. And through the help of our Lord Jesus Christ, we can bring our own meaning to this value together and experience true transformation.
The next value that we have identified is courageous love. The value of courageous love reminds us that just as Jesus loved those who were the most difficult to love, so are we called to do the same. As difficult as it may be to love some people, we must summon the courage to do exactly that. It will require us to move outside our comfort zones, both individually and as a congregation of faith. We will wonder who are the most difficult for us to love. It might be someone with whom we disagree on some level. Very likely it could be someone who is just different from us in any way. The challenge for us is to work to overcome our anxiety in taking the first steps to extend our love. In other words, we must work to be courageous. On a personal level, I find it most difficult for me to extend courageous love to those with whom I strongly disagree on some level. I am thus compelled to work to understand other points of view if I am to effectively love courageously.
The final value is the tension-bearing diversity, and it's the value that I struggled with most. I don't tolerate conflict well, and I want things worked out. But as we look around, we know that our world is full of tensions and conflict. For me, it was really challenging to hear from Pastor Chris that those churches who are willing to be uncomfortable are the ones who end up changing the world. As we talked, we began to consider that tension shouldn't be avoided. In my mind, I thought we were trying to bring an end to conflict. But while talking about tension, I realized that as people of God in a church, our job isn't to resolve all life's tensions, but to provide a safe place to live within those tensions. We reflected on our collective tolerance for discomfort, and I had to admit, I have a very low tolerance for conflict. But the more we considered, the more I started feeling my way to an understanding of this tension-bearing diversity. I think about the issues we face in our world today, and I want those situations changed. I'm seeing that the status quo just isn't good enough anymore. I'm seeing the church and its people as the facilitators, open to bearing the tensions of different perspectives. We are the ones to listen to other viewpoints, deal with difficult ideas in that safe place. Our lives are full of tensions. Chris pointed out that we already deal with discomfort and conflict, different perspectives, more than we even realize. I'm coming to understand that I don't need all the answers. What we need is to step out of our comfort zone, look to Christ, and listen to our brothers and sisters in the world. It will be an ongoing challenge that we must face.
Christ-centeredness, courageous love, self-emptying mission, tension-bearing diversity. I am sure that as we listen to those values, There are concerns that each of you have. I want to let you know that this morning, all we have wanted to do is present to you the path that we believe God is giving to us between the trees. This is the first step. A couple of things that I would like to say in order to encourage us. Two things. First, this path that the session has identified is not something new. We don't believe that this mission and these values are unfamiliar to us. They are already present in our church. They are things that have always been fostered here at First Presbyterian Church, things that matter to us. What the session has done is helped identify these things as core values that will help us find our way through the trees. This mission and these values are what we will use to focus our resources, our energies, our ministries, our leadership, our staff, so that we can continue to move down the path where we feel God calling us. The second thing that I want to reassure everybody over and encourage you over is that the church that has nourished you will continue to do so. It's not our intent to forsake the things that have given you life, so that we can simply focus on the next generation. That being said, we mustn't ignore the truth that the things that have given you life do not give life to the next generation in the same way that they have given you life. I know that this is difficult to hear. But for many in the next generation, worship, the way we do worship, isn't important. And so we believe that we must find new ways to engage the next generation, new ways to introduce them to Jesus, new ways to join Jesus in transforming their lives. But I want to reiterate and I want to emphasize this morning that in no way does that mean that you and what matters to you and what nourishes you doesn't matter. We want to continue to nourish each of you in your relationship with Jesus. We simply want to imagine and explore some things that might also nourish those who will follow. This morning, we have offered you a brief introduction into the mission and values that we've been working on for months now. We've tried to communicate those in various ways through the weekly news. This is just an introduction. This session is planning many opportunities for us to engage one another in conversation, for you to share your thoughts and your passions and your concerns. And keep your eyes open for those opportunities. I will tell you this, we don't want this to be the session's vision. We don't want this to be Chris's vision. We want this to be our vision. We want this to be the vision that God has given to all of us. We want to listen to the Spirit together and look toward the future with faith and with hope. Friends, we share all of this with you in the name of God, our Creator, Christ, our Redeemer, and the Holy Spirit, our Sustainer. Amen.